is just one example of the tough economic situation in Portugal. This food bank helps the poor by giving out basic supplies for free. In the past year, they've seen a record amount of people coming to them, almost 300,000. Portugal is negotiating a bailout deal with the European Union and the IMF. To get the €80 billion loan, the government has to meet strict conditions, meaning tough austerity measures. Tax will go up and there'll be spending cuts. But what are the consequences of increasing VAT whilst cutting wages, pensions, public health spending and social welfare at the same time?
20% of the population are poor. That's 2 million people living on less than €400 a month. Their living conditions will get even worse.
Once a week, Augusta comes to this distribution point in her local parish. She made a modest living as a waitress. Today, the widow gets a €216 monthly pension. With so little, it's impossible to pay the bills, pay for medicine, rent and food. Augusta's uneasy about the proposed bailout conditions.
Of course, I'm worried about the future. They say that until 2015 or 2016, there won't be any improvement in the economic situation. So maybe we should just use leaves to cover ourselves. We'll run around the streets barefoot, just wearing leaves.
A rise in VAT will have a real impact on poor people's daily budget. But there are also middle-class families knocking on the door of the food distribution point at the church now.
There's now something we call new poverty. Lower middle-class people who didn't need any help before now do. And the focus has shifted to these new people who need help.
Elections will take place in early June. Left-wing parties are fiercely opposed to the austerity measures. Many analysts agree that Portugal overspent on infrastructure and prestigious projects, such as high-speed trains and expensive concert halls. The bailout deal will include scaling down public investment. Overspending hasn't just been a state problem, according to this debt counsellor.
Both the private and public sectors are facing serious debt problems. In 2011, the public sector was especially affected because of recent salary cuts.
Porto in northern Portugal has been worst hit by the economic crisis. Officially in northern Portugal, 1 in every 4 young people is jobless. The real figures are supposedly even higher. Older people are also struggling to find work. Some of the street vendors along the Douro River are planning to emigrate.
A solution might be to leave the country, get a job and try to start a new life somewhere else. I'm seriously thinking about doing this.
Portugal's industrial areas are littered with abandoned buildings. Closed production sites are evidence of the main Portuguese problems. Firstly, a lack of competitiveness, and secondly, bad timing. Portugal's political and economic decision-makers realised too late that the country cannot compete with Asian and African countries when it comes to low labour cost products, such as cheap shoes and T-shirts. Joining the Eurozone was another tough task for the fragile companies. Being part of a hard currency area makes exporting more difficult for industries with low competitiveness. Some made it, but many didn't. What's being called restructuring isn't over yet, as the president of the Portuguese Textile Association reminds us.
In this industry, there was a very big cut in the number of workers last year. In 1990, Portugal had 300,000 direct workers in this sector. Now we have about 165,000. As time goes by, the decrease in numbers will continue, but not at such a big rate.
This is Fernando Gomez. The former textile worker is called our hero by his colleagues. For decades, he fought for rights and redundancy payments for thousands of laid-off workers. Fernando knows all about the bankruptcy cases in the recent history of Portugal's textile industry.
There are still thousands of people unemployed, and they don't receive aid from anyone. Portugal is like a ship without a captain. The politicians don't really know where to go, or even what they want.
This is the place where Fernando worked 20 years ago. Looking outside a broken window, today we see a huge area of Chinese-run warehouses, selling their import textiles to customers all over Europe. The Portuguese textile crisis worsened after 2005, when the protectionist European quota system on textile products faded out and cheap fabrics from China poured in. Just one Portuguese outlet survived amidst the Chinese warehouses of Vila do Conde. What's the problem and what's the solution?
Our problem is directly linked to the European decision to let Asian products into Portugal without control. They're overwhelming Portuguese textile production. The solution is to close the borders and to impose high import taxes on non-European products. The level of taxes for Portuguese companies and for Portuguese products should decrease, and we should better control our borders on the ground, at ports and at airports.
But protectionist solutions aren't popular with the EU, and it isn't in the interest of Portugal's market leaders either, such as Somelos, who sell their fabrics worldwide, making good money even in China. Some companies move production to Africa or Asia, keeping just designers and managers in Europe. But Somelos still produces in Portugal.
To compete only with cost, it's impossible. We need to put more added value on our products and to promote the image of the textile industry of Portugal. That's the future.
The social climate's getting tougher. In March, Portugal saw its biggest demonstration for years, which was organised on Facebook. One of the organisers set up an event page and managed to get a crowd of 300,000 people. He thinks the EU mainly serves the export interests of big countries like Germany and France.
It's very important to look at the past of European Union and to perceive how solidarity was important for the creation of European Union. So I see the future of European Union having in mind the past.
These singing bikers took part in the demonstration too. They call themselves Men of Struggle. And this year the Portuguese public is sending them to the Eurovision Song Contest, hoping Europe will listen to this voice of protest. Their revolutionary song is called The Struggle is Joy.
It's a revolution of joy. It's an optimistic revolution. It's a non-violent revolution, and it's like a tsunami that will pass all over Europe. We hope.
De pouco vale a raiva para te ajudar. De noite ou de dia, a luta é alegria. E o povo avança é na rua a gritar.